Chapter 4. Teeth and Truth, POV. Drake. I woke up angry. Not confused, not afraid. Angry in the deep, bone-heavy way that came from waking up in chains when I'd spent a lifetime making sure no one ever managed that twice. The stone beneath my back was cold, the air sharp with that same sick-sweet scent still clinging to my lungs, and the magic-dampening ropes wrapped around my arms drank my power the moment it stirred. I pushed against them anyway, slow and deliberate, teeth bared as the runes flared in response. Figures, everyone alive? I growled, testing the bindings again, harder this time. Silas laughed to my left, not relieved, not nervous. A soft, delighted sound, like he'd woken up exactly where he wanted to be. Alive, awake, and tragically understimulated. Honestly, Drake, I was hoping for at least one severed limb. This feels lazy, I turned my head sharply. You enjoying this? Oh, immensely, he replied cheerfully. New dungeon, new goddess. Very stabby vibes. I'd rate the experience a solid 7 so far, but I'm optimistic. Luciano shifted, boots scraping stone as he lifted his head and took in the room without touching his magic. His eyes traced the sigils in the walls, the weave of the ropes, the symmetry of the cell. He cataloged instead of reacting, and that set my nerves humming. These restraints aren't crude, he said quietly. They're adaptive, respond to intent as much as power. Brute force won't work. Not mine. Not yours, I snarled. So we sit? For now, Luciano said. Anything else feeds the system. Alistair still hadn't spoken. I twisted just enough to see him. Same bindings. Same position. Jaw locked tight, eyes distant, like he was standing guard over something volatile inside his own head. I'd seen that look before, right before he made a decision that would get someone killed. Ow, I said. You're being quiet, he exhaled slowly. We weren't meant to die here. No shit, I snapped. She left us breathing on purpose. That's leverage. Silas clicked his tongue. Oh, absolutely. If she wanted us dead, we'd be decorative stains by now. This? He rattled his bindings lightly. This is foreplay. Say that again, I warned. He grinned wider. Foreplay. Luciano shot him a warning look. Enough. Silas ignored him. I'm just saying, Drake, you don't build a dungeon like this unless you expect your guests to struggle. She wants us thinking. She wants us twitchy. Gods, I adore her already. That's not funny, I said. Silas tilted his head. I didn't say it was. Luciano cleared his throat. We need to be careful how we speak. That made my hackles rise instantly. About who? Luciano met my gaze steadily. About Aurelia. The name tasted wrong in my mouth. She's the target. She was the target, Alistair corrected. Now she's the controlling variable. And a damn effective one, Silas added lightly. She had X ready to pulp us and chose not to. That tells me she's not impulsive. She just pretends to be. I flexed my wrists again, anger rolling hot and familiar through my chest. She's lying about being magickless. About everything. Silas hummed. Oh, she's lying, all right. I just don't think it's about power. He leaned his head back against the stone, smiling to himself. People lie about things they're ashamed of. She's not ashamed. She's curating. That made my stomach twist. Aurelia felt wrong, I said. All three of them looked at me then. Luciano didn't interrupt. Alistair didn't dismiss it. Silas's smile sharpened. Wrong how? Alistair asked carefully. Not corrupted, I said. Not twisted like the Dresden front lines twist people. She felt anchored. The words scraped out of me, ugly and undeniable. Like the land itself was braced behind her. Luciano went very still. That should be possible, Drake, he said slowly. She has no circle. That's what the contract said, I shot back. The contract also said she was magickless and worth a noble title dead. Silas laughed softly. Contracts lie. Knives don't, I swallowed. She touched Alistair. Silas's grin widened. Oh. Now we're getting to the good part. Luciano's eyes snapped to Alistair. And Al reacted, I said, forcing the words out. Not like pain, not like threat, like recognition. Alistair looked away. That doesn't mean? It means everything, Silas cut in, cheerful and sharp. If the land recognizes her and the choosing's coming, he made a little slicing motion at his throat. Circles become optional, Luciano finished the thought grimly. Or she is the anchor. The idea slammed into me like a fist. Dresden didn't forgive the unanchored. It devoured them. I'd seen what the front lines did to men who went in unbound, how they screamed, how they begged, how they changed. She's not surviving Dresden, I said slowly. Dresden is surviving her. Silence followed, heavy, honest. Alistair broke it. Our options are limited. We accept the bracelets and wait for the choosing, or we try to escape and let the kingdom tear us apart. And killing her? I asked. Alistair met my gaze evenly. If she wanted us dead, we'd already be dead. Silas sighed dramatically. And honestly, killing her feels like exactly what Solaris wants, which makes me deeply disinclined to do it. Luciano nodded. Solaris is afraid, and afraid kingdoms outsource their sins. That old, familiar rage stirred again, the kind that remembered cities burning and orders that came stamped with royal seals. So we play along. For now, Alistair said, we observe, we gather information. We don't strike first. I bared my teeth in something that wasn't a smile, and when she tightens the leash, Alistair's eyes hardened. Then we find out who's really holding it. Somewhere beyond the walls, stone shifted. A door opened or closed. Silas chuckled softly. Too late. The dungeon seemed to listen. And I had the sinking certainty that Aurelia von Tempest already knew exactly what we'd decided. I lay there after the conversation stalled, staring up at a ceiling carved from stone old enough to have forgotten who laid it. The sigils weren't decorative. They were worn down by repetition, by sons of being used and reused, reinforced and repaired. This dungeon wasn't a contingency, it was infrastructure. That realization sat heavy in my gut. I'd been in holding cells before. Royal ones. Guild ones. Temporary cages meant to scare, not to last. This wasn't that. The air here didn't smell like rot or neglect. It smelled like purpose. Like something meant to hold what Dresden produced when the front line spat survivors back out broken and dangerous. My jaw tightened as I flexed my wrists again. Slower now, more thoughtful. The ropes didn't just dampen magic, they learned. The first time I pushed, they drank my power greedily. The second time, they adjusted, tightening in places I hadn't stressed before. Adaptive. Smart. Whoever designed them had studied creatures like me and decided brute force was a liability, not a solution. That alone told me something important. Aurelia didn't underestimate monsters. I glanced sideways at Silas, who was still smiling faintly at nothing, eyes unfocused in the way that meant he was thinking about things he enjoyed too much. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't even pretending to be. I'd fought beside him long enough to know that when Silas got quiet and amused, it meant he'd already accepted the worst outcome and was deciding how to make it entertaining. That scared me more than his jokes. Luciano was cataloging. I could see it in the way his gaze moved not randomly, not frantically, but in precise arcs that mapped sigils, walls, sight lines. He wasn't looking for an escape yet. He was learning the system first. Luciano never broke doors. He dismantled the hinges. Alistair was the one I kept watching. He held himself like he always did when command weighed heavier than armor, shoulders squared, breathing controlled. Eyes too, still. That look had preceded every hard call we'd made as a guild, the kind where there was no clean outcome, only survivable ones. But this time there was something else under it. A fracture, not fear. Not doubt, recognition. I hated that. Hated the way my instincts kept circling back to it like a wand you couldn't stop worrying at. I'd seen that look once before, suns ago, on a battlefield that never made it into the histories because Solaris buried its mistakes deep. A man had stepped out of the smoke then unmarked, unarmored, and the land had bent around him instead of breaking him. Alistair had stared the same way he stared now. We hadn't killed that man either. He'd killed us. Not in body, in certainty. I dragged in a slow breath, letting the rage settle into something colder. Anger was easy. Anger was loud. Suspicion required quiet. Aurelia's control wasn't loud. She hadn't shouted, hadn't threatened, hadn't hurt anyone. She just decided. Decided we lived. Decided we stayed. Decided what our choices were allowed to look like. I'd grown up under men like that, lords who smiled while they took everything from you and called it order. Only Aurelia didn't feel like a lord. She felt like territory. I closed my eyes briefly and focused on the memory of her presence, the way the air had changed when she moved. Not heavier. More certain. Like the ground beneath your feet when you realized too late it wasn't going to give way no matter how hard you pushed. The scent came back unbidden, sharp, and sweet, and my magic stirred, even restrained, like it remembered a hierarchy it didn't want to acknowledge. Dresden was a kingdom built on sacrifice. A buffer. A wound kept open so the rest of the world could pretend it was whole. No throne. No crown. Just command passed through necessity and death. If Aurelia belonged to that place the way my instinct said she did, then Solaris hadn't sent us to kill a villain. They'd sent us to assassinate a crownless queen. My fingers curled slowly against the stone as the realization settled. I didn't know what she was yet, or what she wanted beyond testing us, but I knew this much with bone-deep certainty. We weren't trapped in her dungeon. We were standing on her ground. And Aurelia von Tempest hadn't tightened the leash because she needed to. She'd done it because she wanted to see what kind of animals we really were when the cage stopped being theoretical.